Welcome to another installation of our help video series for the iFish Illinois data portal. Today we're going to cover how to enter data for a sampling event. Recall that site visits, as you see on the screen here, are a collection of samples, and those site visits can be collected in a group to be a part of a survey. And so there's a couple ways in which you will start to encounter your sample data form. One is if you have already created a site visit, such as this one here, and you are ready to save it and go on to the add a sample for the site visit with this radio button and hit save. I'm going to back out of that for a second. The other way is to simply locate your site visit in the grid by conducting a search of any of the headers, and then clicking the add a sample button or the plus sample button to this survey. Either one will work. And so I've used that button, and now I have the sample form. It's a little bit long, but it's not too bad, and it has several optional fields that I'll cover in a minute. But as you can see, either by proceeding from the site visit form and saving and proceeding then to the sample form, or by adding a sample from the site visit grid, this information up at the top here is already populated for you. The first thing that you have to do is indicate the location on the water body where you conducted your survey. This would be a station code for streams or rivers. This would be a station in a lake situation, all of which have coordinates and gives us an idea of where on the water body the sampling event occurred. And so this particular site visit is hypothetical and is to our research ponds in Champaign, and so we've got a bunch of goofy sites here. We'll just say this was conducted at Pond 1. And then we need to indicate the kind of sample it is. This is important for users of the data to know whether you are targeting a specific species or conducting a sampling event for a particular purpose, such as a mark recapture work, or whether this is a representative sample of the fish community, notwithstanding gear selectivity and things like that. So let's say this is a community sample, all right, and then we need to tell the system and record the kind of gear we've used. We've divided gear types into just basically 4 broad types: anything involving electricity, anything involving a net, seine hauls are separate, and then there's a miscellaneous category. That category includes things like angling or draining of ponds and things like that, and those two things. And we can add things to that as needed. But let's say this is an electrofishing sample, and let's say this is a Wisconsin box DC electrofishing sample. So those so far are all required fields indicated by the asterisk next to the label there. Your particulars about your electrofishing run, your amperage, voltage, conductivity, and the distance you sampled are all optional fields that you can fill in. You do have to provide an effort in terms of time, and so you can just use these up arrows to add or subtract. There's a box for days, a box for hours, a box for minutes. The days is typically more common for overnight nets or 48-hour net sets, for example. Same with hours, minutes for electrofishing. You can do that, or you can just put the cursor in the box and type in 15 minutes, and you're off and running. Every sample needs a run or net number, so this can be a sequential order. However you tend to number your runs is fine. Numbers are good. And then you want to indicate on 5-minute intervals when you started the sample. This is valuable particularly to just know the time of day a sample was occurred. And so you have the hours here from 12 a.m. to 11 p.m. So we'll choose 10 a.m. and then in the minutes section we'll click on the 20. We started at 10:20 a.m. And then for the starting latitude and longitude, these are also required. So when you start an electrofishing run, the expectation is that you record a latitude and longitude at the beginning of your run. Preferably, it's helpful to have it at the end of your run too, because then the actual transect or the path that you or the linear path that you shocked at could then be mapped. So our starting latitude here is going to be 41.12345. Oops, too many ones. And then minus 87.23456. Okay, 5 digits are required to get enough specificity, and that'll give us our latitude and longitude. You also have optional fields, like I said, for ending latitude and longitude, and then optional fields for all sorts of abiotic information. When you record air temperature, you can choose the units in which you enter it, but it will be stored in the system as Celsius and reported back to you as Celsius. And so we can record pH, dissolved oxygen, alkalinity, Secchi disk depth, turbidity, weed coverage, velocity for stream data, stream loaded width, but all optional to provide that flexibility. Now, if you've conducted any subsampling in terms of time, you can indicate that here. So, for instance, in this case, we may have conducted some subsampling for bluegill. So we're going to go ahead and just find the BLG. There it is. And then we did that for 7 minutes of subsampling of the 15 total in our effort up here. Okay, and then we need to make sure we hit the plus button. And so there, bluegill were subsampled for 7 minutes. And then I'm just going to make a note that this is fake data, which should be obvious. And that is it, that we've filled out the form for sample. The next step in the process is typically to add the fish measurements for that sample, but you can also just go back to a list of samples to look at your grid of samples, or you can go ahead and create another sample and add all of this information for multiple sampling events over, of course, before you get into fish measurements. So just be sure to hit that save button, and you'll get a nice message here at the top. It indicates it's been saved. And because I had clicked the create another sample, I get a blank form. I'm going to cancel out of that. Here's my grid of samples, and here is that sample that I just created. And if we open that up, you can see all the data that I just entered. Okay, and that is how you enter sample data. The next video in the sequence here will be to walk you through how to enter fish measurements. As always, if you have questions or discover an issue, go ahead and fill out the bug report by clicking on that menu item and coming to this form. Otherwise, just give us a contact either by email or by phone, and we'll help you out. And of course, check out our library of help videos as we go along.